And now, let us light a final candle for those joys and sorrows not spoken. May we hold in our hearts those who have spoken, those they have named, and those we hold in silence. May it be so.
There is no doubt that these are anxious times, and I found something to be really helpful for soothing anxiety in recent weeks: belly breathing. Now, you may laugh, but it works. Let's try it. So I'm going to invite you into a meditation on belly breathing. Just get comfortable. Close your eyes if you like. And place one or both hands on your belly. Begin to feel your breath coming in, flowing out. Notice how your belly rises with the in-breath and falls with the out-breath. Bring all of your attention to the rising and falling of your belly. Rising and falling. If your mind gets pulled into the turmoil of thinking or strong emotions, bring it back gently, kindly, to rest on the sensation of your belly rising and falling. Rising and falling. Just that. The hand or hands resting on your belly can give you a stronger sensation of pressure. So you can stay focused on the contact between hands and belly and follow the wave-like movements of your belly. As you breathe in, the wave comes in. As you breathe out, the wave rolls out. In, out. In, out. We'll stay here for a minute until I ring the bell. Now gently return to this moment. And I invite you, as you're ready, to join in singing Meditation on Breathing. It's number 1009 in your teal hymnal or also in your order of service. And just sing whatever part you are moved to sing.
Good morning. I'm Phil Giudice, and this is a poem by Rosemary Watola Trommer, Love Relentlessly. Love relentlessly, she said, and I want to slip these two words into every cell in my body. Not the sound of the words, but the truth of them, the vital, essential need for them. Until relentless love becomes a cytoplasmic imperative, the basic building block of every action, because anger makes a body clench, because fear invokes cowering, shrinking, shock. I know the impulse to run, to turn fists, to hurt back. I know too the warmth of cell-deep love, how it spreads through the body like an ocean wave, how it doesn't erase anger and fear, rather seeds itself somehow inside it. So as I contract, love bids me to open, wide as a leaf that unfurls in spring, until fear is not all I feel. Love relentlessly. Even saying those words aloud invites both softness and ferocity into the chest, makes the heart throb with simultaneous urgency and willingness, a radical pulsing of love, pounding love, thumping love, a rebellion of generous love, tenacious love, a love so foundational every step of what's next begins and continues as an uprising, upwelling, ongoing infusion of love, tide of love, honest love.
Jump before you fall again, before you lose Look up, look up, hold on. Sometimes your life feels like a broken roller coaster, 1,000 useless moving parts. Look up, do you see the sunlight? There's flowers in your hair. Hold on, 'cause somebody loves you. You know, trouble's always gonna be there. Don't let it bring you to your knees. Look up, trouble's always gonna be there. Don't let it bring you to your knees. Look up.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Matt and Emily. In January 2023, I found myself sharing a City of Boston holding tank with a nun. It's not a punchline. Sister Linda Bessam and I had been arrested as part of a sit-in at Mayor Wu's office. We and other members of the New Democracy Coalition were attempting to hand-deliver a letter calling on Mayor Wu to change the name of slave trader Peter Faneuil's Hall. As we sat all night on that cold concrete jail bench, we shared our life's journeys, and honestly, that alone would have been story enough. But as the night passed, Linda, who spent her working life as a teacher, taught me as she turned her faith into action. We sang freedom songs. She composed a new song. And then, as we sat in that jail cell with some gentle prompting from Linda, our police officer guard, Randy, told us about his life, his son, his dreams, his ambitions. The longer we listened, the more his humanity shone through, the bigger his smile became, the more tender his reflections. Following Linda's lead, we simply beamed our love, and he began to ask us why we were there, why this issue was so important to us. And the beauty of it was, though he was our jailer, our own power was never diminished as long as we stayed in the spirit of love. I was reminded of Nelson Mandela, who throughout his 27 years in prison was said to have always treated his jailers with kindness and respect. It's a lot easier to do in 7 hours. In the early hours of the next morning, another officer stopped by to let us know the bail bondsperson was on her way. "You may not know it," he confided, "but some of us here agree with you. So thank you for what you're doing." And that is the power of love, my friends. And that, in a nutshell, is the essence of spiritual defiance. Explaining the title of his book, Spiritual Defiance, Building a Beloved Community of Resistance, Robin Meyer says, "I'm talking about resistance as a form of direct or indirect action, opposing anything in the dominant culture that brings death or indignity to any member of the human family or to creation itself. We," he's talking about liberal Christians, "are a community that lives to honor our inheritance, that is, to remember. But we are also called to shape the future through hope, to bend the arc of history toward justice, as Dr. King would say. This same spirit of resisting injustice everywhere is reflected in the work of Dr. King, as well as in stories of the life of Jesus. The spirit has also lived powerfully in the life of Pope Francis, who, as we know, is lying in a hospital in Rome right now. The Pope is a follower of liberation theology, which speaks of the preferential option for the poor, including not just material wealth, but also their knowledge, their experience, their spirituality. Liberation theology is grounded in the conviction that God is not neutral, but is always on the side of those who most struggle to live. Pope Francis' unwavering devotion to uplifting the oppressed has often put him at odds with other Vatican officials whose interests revolve around politics and power, which you will know if you've seen the movie Conclave. Spiritual Defiance also describes the life's work of Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, known as Thai. Born in Vietnam and ordained as a monk at age 16, Thai's teaching and social activism, especially as an advocate for peace, caused him to be exiled from his home country. Thai coined the term engaged Buddhism, stating that Buddhism is not merely about individual liberation, but about collective liberation. That Buddhists cannot simply retreat from the world and all its concerns and attain nirvana in isolation, but must engage in political and social struggles against oppression and injustice. Thai recognized that a religious community cannot simply stay on the sidelines, but must take a stand. He tirelessly promoted nonviolent solutions to conflict and encouraged his followers to open their eyes to the interdependence of all living beings on earth. Awareness of this state of interbeing leads us to not only avoid harming human life, but also to avoid harming non-human animals in the natural world. When bombs begin to fall, said Thai, you cannot stay in the meditation hall all of the time. Meditation is about the awareness of what is going on, not only in your body, in your feelings, but all around you. Thai had a beautiful phrase, no mud, no lotus. A reminder that happiness and suffering are deeply intertwined, that you cannot have one without the other. Often, if I find myself in a challenging situation, I remember that phrase, no mud, no lotus. It reminds me of the story we heard earlier, the one Kate told about the Buddha in the trash heap. At first, there was just a muddy, vacant lot filled with trash until a symbol of peace and harmony in the statue of a Buddha was placed in the middle. Just that one simple act inspired a whole community to reclaim that space, and in further acts of faith, of peaceful resistance, to build something beautiful. Spiritual defiance can happen peacefully, quietly, reminiscent of the iconic Flower Power photograph by Bernie Boston, taken during the 1967 March on the Pentagon, that showed a protester placing a flower into the barrel of a National Guardsman's rifle. I think you all probably remember that, or many of you. There are echoes in these words of Thich Nhat Hanh. The garbage notices the flower, he says, and the flower notices the garbage. These are tendencies, somehow organic, so they need not be enemies of each other. If you know how to take care of one and the other, you don't need to have a conflict between the two. It's like suffering and happiness. Without mud, there is no lotus, he goes on. Without suffering, there's no happiness. We have to learn how to embrace the suffering of the world with a lot of tenderness. The ethical virtue at the heart of Buddhism, at the heart of most religions, in fact, is ahimsa, non-wounding, non-violence, or peacefulness. Buddhism centers ahimsa because violence is the force that causes the most suffering in the world. Walking the Buddhist path toward enlightenment means resisting violence in all forms. That's why Thai defines mindfulness as the practice of peace. There is a tendency, Thai says, to be individualistic in us, a seed of egoism. But that isn't all, because in us there is the other seed, the seed of togetherness, the desire to be with other people, the desire to help and be kind to others. That seed also exists in every one of us. He talked about our human tendency toward individualism, which he called a seed of egoism. But that seed is counterbalanced by another seed, the seed of togetherness, desire to be with other people, to help, to be kind to others. If we're exposed to an environment where the seed of anger, hatred, and other negative emotions are watered every day, that seed will grow and manifest itself strongly in our lives. But if we have the chance to be exposed to a loving, understanding environment where the seed of compassion, loving kindness can be watered every day, then we become more loving people. Both capacities exist in us. In both Buddhism and Christian liberation theology, recognize the power of love to resist. Our world has a centuries-old history of resistance, both in Eastern and Western faith traditions. Robin Meyer reminds us that when Jesus, the rabbi and teacher, came preaching, it was to proclaim the end of things as they are and the breaking of things that are to be. And his central theme? The status quo is not to be criticized, it is to be destroyed. One of Jesus' most subversive messages is deceptively simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus, said Meyer, brought a new way of seeing and a new ethical imperative. The demands of love and mercy are transposable. What is happening to others is happening to me. Your response to others is your response to me. And when the truth and the power of that message took hold among Jesus' followers over the decades of his death, after his death, the empire could not hold. Love your neighbor. Love the stranger, no matter their religion, their skin color, gender identity, immigration status, political affiliation. It is a message that has resounded through the ages, though not every Christian takes it to heart, as they should. Spiritual defiance also relies on embodied noncompliance as a key to recommitting to our spiritual life. What Meyer calls defiant, anti-imperial, countercultural thorns in the flesh of empire. I just want to pause for a minute. I like the idea of being a defiant, anti-imperial, countercultural thorn in the flesh of empire. How about you? So here's an example of that. In 2013, a 79-year-old woman chained herself to earth-moving equipment near Oklahoma City to protest the building of the Keystone XL pipeline. They cut her loose, put her in jail, and asked her why she did it. "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof," she said, quoting the Psalms. "And besides, haven't we talked about it enough?" We should be building beloved communities of defiance, says Meyer. We ought to be subversive again for the cause of love. And there may well come a time when some of us are moved to put our bodies in the path of injustice. Many of us will be ready. The UUA, Unitarian Universalist Association, showed its readiness for spiritual defiance this past week by joining 27 religious groups in a lawsuit asserting that ICE policy violates the First Amendment. And I don't know about you, but that act of resistance made me incredibly proud to be a member of this faith. Spiritual defiance, whether embodied, voiced, or written in a lawsuit, is best practiced in community. Like other spiritual resistance leaders over the centuries, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, Jesus, Martin Luther King, they all built communities of devoted followers. They also carefully chose the right moment to stand firm, as well as the time to wait and plan and gather more support. There's a Buddhist story that's often told about this kind of discernment. Ajahn Chah, the Thai forest monk and spiritual leader, was walking with his students one day and passed a large boulder. "Do you think that boulder is heavy?" he asked them. "Yes, it's extremely heavy," one student replied. "Only if you try to pick it up," said Chah. The teacher's lesson: we can avoid picking up unnecessary boulders in our lives. There is a time to be courageous and bold, as well as a time to pause and assess various options for action. In the middle of all the planning and action, there must be inspiration, there must be hope, supporting and feeding the fire of commitment. So where are hope and inspiration to be found these days? Again, Robin Meyer asserts, resistance to empire never comes from the established order. It comes from artists. It bubbles up in their poetry. It leaks off the canvas. It slips past the censors who come to close the show and then fall asleep in the theater. There are those who think that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher brought down the Iron Curtain, he says. Not so. It was the poets in Prague who did it. Now, Meyer's assertion piqued my curiosity, and this is what I found. The literary counterculture centered in Czechoslovakia and inspired by visits from Allen Ginsberg, Philip Roth, John Updike, among others, fueled dissident writers who were transformed into living symbols of the human rights movement that would ultimately dismantle the Iron Curtain. The Cold War era was marked by the rise of these brave voices, individuals who dared to wield their pens as weapons against oppressive regimes. Hope bloomed as a creative outpouring in the middle of brutality and repression, just like the Buddha in the trash heap. I need to just take a little break from my script here to share some news with you. Unfortunately, because I bring my phone to the pulpit, I see news flashes. And I just learned two things. So one, I think maybe happened last night, is that the Trump administration has now decided that ICE should remove and deport unaccompanied minors, children, without their parents. That was one. The second one was that MSNBC has decided to drop the Joy Reid show. Now this, my friends, this is the rise of fascism. This is what we are seeing. These are the first signs. The censoring of the media, the deporting of immigrants. Just take a breath there. But we do need hope. And musician, actor, and spiritual seeker Nick Cave has this to say about hope. Hopefulness is not a neutral position. It is adversarial. It is the warrior emotion that can lay waste to cynicism. Each redemptive or loving act, as small as you like, such as reading to your little boy, or showing him a thing you love, or singing him a song, or putting on his shoes, keeps the devil down in the hole. It says the world and its inhabitants have value and are worth defending. It says the world is believing in, and in time we come to find that this is so. This past weekend, as I woke in the middle of the night to the cries of my 2-year-old granddaughter and then rocked her gently back to sleep, I thought about Cage's words. Each redemptive or loving act says the world and its inhabitants are worth defending. The world is worth believing in. And if this is not also spiritual defiance, then I don't know what it is. I'll close by sharing this message from Reverend Wendy Bartell, sent to you ministers this week. I need you all to take exquisite care of yourselves as best you can while we work to bring justice into being, even for just 1 minute today. Would you, now or sometime very soon, give yourself a moment to notice something nourishing? Perhaps a child, a furry one, your own breath, a flower, an act of resistance, the feeling of love in your being when you think of a loved one, a great song on the radio or in your head, someone who did what they promised to do, art, a poem, clothes that made it to the hamper, whatever would be nourishing to you. And just be with that nourishment as fully as you can in whatever way would enhance your joy. We need joy too. In this moment, we may need joy more than ever before. May it be so, dear friends. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. And now, please rise as you are willing and are able, join in singing hymn number 1045, There is a Balm in Gilead. These are the words of Mark Miller. When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down, explanations can't be found. I will climb to holy ground. I will rise. I will rise. Dear friends, take all that we have shared here this morning. Take a glimmer of hope with you out into the world. Be a blessing to all those you meet, and may you yourselves be blessed. Amen.